If you walk away from the military, you are now one less person who is oppressing the people who are committing genocide. But the difference here is that if you do walk away, there is no difference to the suffering of this child.
People still had that choice that whether they should move on to like that world where utopia exists, where no illegal things exist in the first sense of humanity. Where finally people still chosen that human intent that I choose myself over every single person out there.
He is born in this manipulative society that has created a facade of happiness, and he is obliged to grow in this society. That is their claim, but not ours.
Why the empathy levels will actually work for that particular person as well. He has always grown in a society where the empathy has been characterized as the greater thing, because you have to be helpful to create an utopia. So that means this person has another type of empathy level, because he knows that he has to serve the society, he has to be helpful, he can't do any kind of crime.
The motion for the finals reads, this House, as a citizen of Omelas, would walk away. Omelas is a city which has been given in the context. So this House, as a citizen of Omelas, would walk away. Without any further ado, I would like to call upon the Honorable Prime Minister to open the upper house and open this debate. Hear, hear.
Think of an utopia, how is life in utopia. They don't know what the difficulties are, they don't know how the sorrows are, they don't know how the grief is, how to feel the grief. Those particular, the positive and aesthetics emotions, he don't know about those particular aesthetic emotions. He is not familiar with any sort of sufferings and don't know how to grieve. He is lack of the particular emotions. Then suddenly think, I know about sufferings and sorrows, etc., etc. I came to know what the utmost level of inhumanity that is of an innocent child. This is a very important part. A person who is not familiar with even punishment of a particular crime, for the particular crimes, even of a punishment for a particular criminal, then suddenly he have came to know about the punishment and about the inhumanity that has been done with an innocent child, right? That moral compass is kind of redirected and misdirected for the particular person, I believe. Then if it is being true, as there is no crime, we think they are most likely to compensate and do care for each other, right? Because if you look about the tribe people, there is no discrimination, no one doing wrong to anyone. They live in a community, they build up a community, their moral happiness comes from those particular community. We believe this place is kind of have a similarity of the particular place as the characteristic of the people as an utopian background for the particular people. If being true, if that the being case, it becomes very hard for them to accept that their happiness and prosperity comes from the profound injustice. That is the first moral reasoning will be of our debate. If I can comprehend about the criminal and the crimes, it could be easier for me to accept those particular punishment that is being punished on a particular person. But as if I can comprehend those particular scenarios at this moment of the time when the scenario's intensity is very much higher and the vulnerability is very much higher, and I believe when I have come to know that all my prosperity and happiness are result from those type of inhuman activities, I believe that creates the injustice beyond comprehension and moral imperative of dehumanizing of a person. That is the first moral reasoning why I want to walk away from this particular community. Meaning, every happiness, every prosperity can be experienced and will experience and will remind me of those particular scenario, and that will go through my whole life to the particular date outside, but inside it will continue to date. That makes happiness meaningless. By what point our opposition can argue those happiness loses its meaningful. And I believe when aesthetic emotions loses its meaning and loses its community, as it's a community driven thing, so we believe that creates a no value on this particular aesthetic emotions, right? Even think about the real life people, real life like people not living on the utopian ground sacrifices their happiness for the moral meaning. You will look about the we are banning, we are not going to Starbucks or something, we are not taking Coca-Cola or something, not drinking that. In real life, people are sacrificing for the moral reasoning. So those people whose background are depending on this particular moral basis, I believe those people will absolutely does this. Then imagine someone living in utopia. It will be more difficult to think that injustice result in happiness, right? I already know what actions, what motivation will derive me. They can argue that it will be more difficult for me to survive being in a particular utopian condition or to a real life scenarios. I believe when a community has already left, when some people has already left, named in a particular contest, the one who walks away. So there are the examples that my community people can go there, can do the particular struggle, whether it is comparatively good, comparatively bad or wrong, but those people are doing those particular struggle, upholding their particular moral compass on the high level, and that is the level everyone wants to follow, right? So your life may gonna be comparatively not utopian, but I at least have the pleasure that I have done those type of things that creates my moral happiness at the adulthood level. We believe that life will not become as hell as they particular thing. We believe that they cannot argue that they don't know how to live a life, they don't know what the struggles are, they don't know how to go through the particular life. I believe they particularly knows how to go through the particular life because they belongs to a community, they live in a community. The second thing of this particular debate, and that is the most important thing, that we believe the happiness is organic. It's sometimes collective basis, right? The metric of happiness of a community based people, I first mentioned why this is a people of community based. Think of happiness in quite a same way. The things that creates their particular happiness is derived from some quite same way. That is because every religious community has some fixed their religious festives. Every tribe has some festives where they can all gather and do those particular things. Omelas portray that image as there is no crime. It is portrayed that everyone works together, everyone do fun together, everyone do enjoy together and spend their leisure time together. Lastly, I think I can be an example. I know there will be more people who wants to live but not taking those decisions, but whether cannot take a decision. I believe I can be an example. I believe I can show that a particular people folding those moral compass, you can live here just like I can live here, and I am living the life of the particular struggle. When there is no people living in the Omelas, we believe there is no point the child being tortured. Thank you. Very proud to propose.
Few things to consider before we start this debate. Few pieces of characterization. Number one, we can assume that this individual has probably lived here his whole life. Number two, the contents of the desert out there are probably unknown. For the purposes of this argument, we're not going to assume necessarily that the desert out there and what lies afterwards is necessarily worse than the world that we have. Our arguments don't premise on that. However, given that Omelas is literally utopia, anywhere outside of it is probably going to be worse, or at best will get same. The burdens of government thus far are two. Number one, they are going through this action and how they're going to go through this action. And secondly, the fact that their burden is to prove that why you're going to go through this action. The common sense answer or the common sense decision is to stay. They did not give me much of a reason for as to why they're going to go outside of simply one argument, which is about guilt, which I'm going to address firstly. Okay, a few things. Why is it that this person is not going to be guilty? It's because of the societal narrative that probably exists in the context of Omelas itself. Most people in this world have chosen not to actually touch this person, right? Not to comfort this person. Secondly, there's probably a utilitarian reasoning behind this person. This person probably sees the people around them and probably can judge the fact that, okay, this one person is suffering, but given that hundreds, if not hundreds of thousands of people who live in the city are going to be benefited or are going to be harmed if this person is comforted, then they're probably going to be able to choose themselves that, okay, I have this guilt that my pleasure comes from this individual, but at the same time that the pleasure of others come, and that me doing anything to this person is going to lead to the harm of everybody else, right? Omelas itself is a society that's incredibly fragile and only exists because of some people's choice. And because the fact that we can assume that most people have not made this choice, the vast majority of society probably thinks that this is completely justified. And as an individual, if you see everybody in your society believing something, you're probably going to believe it too. That guilt probably doesn't exist. It's probably been bashed out of you, right? Fourthly, this individual is probably aware of everything that they've said from birth. This is not a sudden realization that this kid is suffering. Probably from birth, from schools, everywhere, you know that the fundamental reasoning behind the society is that this kid suffers for the betterment of all. What that means is from school, this person is probably taught, or at least knows everybody else, sees everybody else do this, and from a child's perspective, being so impressionable, probably believes that this whole system is justified. Fifthly, Omelas isn't a tribe. A tribe isn't a place where there isn't patriarchy, where there isn't domination, where there isn't hunger. All of their examples and illustrations given by that are completely incorrect. And sixthly, the individual doesn't know this kid personally, right? They talked about how people are empathetic in this world. I completely agree. People are probably very empathetic. But we need to think about the levels of empathy that they have. I have great amounts of empathy when I see my father, my mother, or my children get hurt. But if I hear that some random kid on the other side of the world has been hurt, I probably won't care as much. This kid is probably not personally known by this person at all. If anything, this person has never even seen the face of this individual because they're trapped in a dungeon somewhere beneath the city, right? They'll probably prioritize the relationships and family that they have with people way more than everything else. Thirdly, although this debate is not about a principle, and the government side did run a principle argument, I still think there's something that I need to address, right? We need to think about this principle from the perspective of the mind of the individual here, right? Number one, the person isn't participating in the crime itself, right? This whole system is not being upheld by this person doing anything individually, but probably by some level of magical curse, a magical force or a curse, right? Secondly, this person has no marginal cost or marginal benefit in leaving or staying, right? If he leaves, it's not like the system that's perpetuating this sort of suffering is going to change in any way, right? Let me give you an analogy. In a robbery, a person who is driving the money away isn't technically committing the crime. He is necessary for the crime to exist. However, if you are a person who had a debt to the bank that got robbed and the bank went bankrupt, sure, you're benefiting from the crime occurring, but did you have any active part in the crime? No. If you didn't have that debt, or you didn't have any debt wiped out in the first place, would that crime have been stopped in any way? No, it would not have. With all of that said, even if we assume all of this, they've never proven to us why this individual would care about the kid in any way other than the argument about guilt, and we've proven that this person is probably going to prioritize other things over that, right? Firstly, let's talk about interpersonal relationships as an argument. Again, we're assuming that the desert and the world outside of the desert is being very charitable, is at least somewhat better. There's some paradise out there as well. Let's just assume that for our arguments, right? This life, the person is likely to have a large number of really good relationships. Why are the relationships going to be good? Friendships, relationships, whatever, right? Number one, because there's no sorrow, meaning there's probably not going to be much strain in relationships anyway. Secondly, there's no material scarcity, and thirdly, there's no mental illness. These are the biggest causes of strain on relationships as a whole because they don't exist. This person probably has all of the relationships be incredibly good and love and care for the people that they have. And on top of that, because this is a society where achievements don't really exist, where there isn't something that you need to work for, people are probably going to prioritize friendships and relationships and the human connections that they have more than anything else in their lives. So when they go out into the desert, they're going to be leaving all of those interpersonal relationships behind, which will lead to a huge longingness for human connection because you're probably lonely out there without all of the people that you love. And considering how much you love these people, you're probably going to regret going out there no matter what the outcome because you're never going to see them ever again, considering how much time and effort you put into them. With that, POI. Any POIs from either of the houses?
Question is, how you are justifying the utilitarian perspective over someone's life, even why that one life is not important for that particular person?
Two responses to this. Number one, this is a motion about, number one, a model motion or a wood motion, and it's about the perspective of the individual. You need to prove to me why this individual would see this as or would feel guilty about this, or why this person would view that principle. I think we gave you an extensive analysis about why from the perspective of him being a child, it's going to get drilled into him that this whole thing is justified. And even if it isn't, this person is probably going to prioritize the utilitarian benefit benefit of his family over that of the child in question. And if you're talking about principle, I think we've properly explained to you that in this debate, based on what we've already said about how this person is not complicit in the crime in any way, that him leaving will not perpetuate the system, I don't think it makes any difference. If in Omelas, everybody except for one person left the city, it would make literally no difference. As long as Omelas as an institution exists, if the child leaves or doesn't leave, if the person leaves or doesn't leave, it makes literally no difference. And the person in question probably understands this. The person in question probably understands that this is him going away is not going to change anything, right? Because we've given you all of the characterization about guilt, because we've given you all the characterization about principle, I don't think that opening government in any way is going to win this debate, sensibly because none of their arguments really have any material basis. And after all of that, let me give you an illustration. This person could lead a completely fulfilled life, a completely happy life, full of good emotions, with little to no guilt behind it, mostly because the principle that we've been running is something that he'll understand better. And out of all of that, the only thing that they've been able to prove is simply guilt, which is an argument we just completely destroyed. And this person is probably going to live completely lonely for the rest of their life into the outer unknown, where literally anything could happen. With that, I'd like to rest my case. Thank you.
I would like to start our case by reiterating what my previous speaker said. If no one lives in Omelas, Omelas ceases to exist, and this child will likely not be tortured. From that, let me first engage them. They're trying to tell you that this is something that is going to be drilled in your head, that is literally clashing with the motion. The motion says you know about this the first time you go to the depths of the citadel. So they're characterizing this as something that does not exist in the motion in the first place. And secondly, let's engage them on a more mechanical level. They try to tell you that if you do not know the child do not know you, you are likely not going to care for that child in the first place. You'll have to understand at a human level how this child is, and I will show you, we as people living in a dystopia, we still do that exact thing. You'll have to understand that these people accept injustice, or people accept violence when they have either one, grown with it, or two, they have any reasons to believe in this. These people in Omelas has never seen discrimination, never seen any crime, never seen any sort of lack of anything in their life. There have been literally no sense of injustice, no hatred for any other people, nothing that can be called an antagonizing character has ever occurred in their life, ever. Suddenly, you break it to them that you are happy because one child, an innocent child, someone as innocent as you living in Omelas is, someone as loving like you living in Omelas is constantly tortured, and that is why you are happy. That is not something that will be easy for him to accept, or that is not something that will be ever be normalized in his mind. What will happen in the consequence of this? When you are happy, you will know what is causing that happiness. When you are not hungry, when you are having any sort of joy in your life, you will know what is causing that happiness in your life. That happens even in living in a dystopia. We experience this. When we are constantly living a lavish life, we have the guilt that our parents have given us that life, or someone is responsible for us having that life, and that in a dystopian world like us even makes us feel guilty, and which makes us feel the responsibility to do something for our parents or something for the people who have caused us to have this life. So imagine what is going to go through one living in Omelas who have never experienced anything like this in any way, shape or form, or when they talks about giving up any comfort, or that going in the desert and not knowing anything that can occur. You have to understand that a community which is known as the one who walks away already exists in the desert. One. But why is that community more exclusive? Because when you are thinking of this situation in your mind, you will know that a very specific type of people have left Omelas. People who are more moral than currently living in Omelas. People who are more likely to be as compassionate and as empathetic as you are have left this community to live there. The people who have left Omelas are more likely to look like you, who are thinking about this issue, who are thinking about this child's suffering, and that is why living for the desert is not likely as bad as they try to portray to you. You are not going to literally hunt and gather when you live for the desert. What you are probably going to do is you are probably going to have some sort of lackings, some sort of discomfort and some unhappiness in that world. Why is it still better? You have to understand when you experience happiness in the desert, you will know that it is organic. You will know that you are not causing causing a moral imperative injustice for that happiness to exist. Rather living in Omelas, growing up in that culture of no hatred, no opposition, living in Omelas, the happiness that you will face will be less in quality than compared to the happiness that you will face in the desert. And even the discomfort that you're going to face in desert, we will like to argue that even that discomfort is going to come from a sense of moral superiority. And what is that? That is that I left a place that was full of injustice and discrimination in the first place. When you know that you are living in a place which has perpetuated injustice for a long time, and you are experiencing the crops of that injustice, the happiness that you would face there is tarnishing, and the hardships that you're going to go through in the desert is going to be more fulfilling, knowing that why you are experiencing this is a very moral cause and something that you believed in. You have to also understand that when we say that Omelas can one day not have any citizen, why are we making such a big claim? You have to understand that when one person does something very morally superior, it creates an example for other people. You have to, and going through some very hard situations is more easier for people when a lot of people are actually doing it. We as human have herd mentality. When we see other people doing something, we are more likely to do that or more likely to go through that outcome, which means that more people living outside the desert, or more people leaving Omelas to live in the desert, it can create a mechanism of change, or at least it can create a hopeful situation of change where more people are going to talk about leaving Omelas, more people are going to discuss this decision, and taking later, the impact can be that maybe not now, maybe not in 10 years, but at least at some point in the eternity, Omelas can have no people, and this child can finally be torture-free after everything that he has gone through. An example of how people actually give up their comfort and give up things if more people have done it. You will see that when Rana Plaza or Tazrin Garments incidents happen, Europeans have given up any sort of Bangladeshi clothing, despite that being very cheap for them, which means their life was actively more hard to buy clothes that originated from different countries. They still did it. Why? Because some people in Bangladesh that they have never met have been burned alive, have died because the building collapsed on their head, which means that even in a dystopian world like 21st century Earth, people do it. People sacrifice their own happiness for that. What makes you think that people living in Omelas with no sort of jealousy, no sort of internal motivation to actively harm others is going to be so afraid and so scared of giving up their comforts is beyond me, and they have not given us any active characteristic mechanism from that point of view. So we believe in the end, maybe 100 or 150 years later, we can say there is a hope that Omelas, the child of Omelas, will not be tortured in our world. And they cannot say that in any way, shape or form. Thank you.
Understand, panel, that the entirety of government's case hinges on the idea that these individuals are somehow morally complicit and that somehow these individuals perpetuate the suffering of this child. My speech will consist of responses from the DPM's arguments as well as a direct argument to their claim that these individuals are perpetuating the suffering of this child. Firstly, the DPM has stated that everybody will leave this city eventually. This is incorrect because of the very fact that we have stated in our previous speech that there is obviously going to be a social narrative that keeps people there, and along with these people staying there, they're still reproducing in this city, and there is still an influx of this population of the city is still always growing. Hence, their argument about everyone eventually leaving goes out the window. Now, second, they have pointed out a misunderstanding in our motion. Let's clear this up. Even if the person does see the visceral suffering of this child, even if this person does see the visceral suffering that this child is going through in order to uphold their way of life, this will very likely, our arguments still hold because of the very fact that there is that social narrative that normalizes the suffering of this child. Because panel understand that this person is only being shown the suffering of this child when they become an adult. When they become an adult, they have likely rationalized and in internalized the necessity for this child's suffering in order for their way of life to still continue. Hence, they do not feel the guilt. They're likely not to feel the guilt regardless of seeing how visceral the suffering of this child is. Next, they've made the argument that there is a community of apostates, a community of people who are living outside the city. Panel, this is entirely incorrect. These people, they don't go out there and form a community. They're just out there. They just leave the city never to be seen again. There's nothing to say that they are making a community for themselves outside there. We don't know what's out there. There could be something better or there could be something worse. And actually, on that point, there is nothing better. There is no way of life better for the individual citizen out there in the desert, because of the simple fact that this is, as far as we know, this is a unique world, a unique society in which there is no other, in which there is no other match. Next, even if these people leave and create a community, let's take them at their best. Even if these people do, even if these apostates create a community, it will intrinsically, by very nature, be worse than the life that they lived in the community, that they live in the society, because of the fact that the society is a utopia. They cannot build that utopia again. Next, let's talk more about the narrative. Extending on the narrative, is that this narrative exists for a long time. Actually, I've already explained in my rebuttal how it is that this narrative helps to mitigate the argument that this person will feel guilty, helps to mitigate the argument that this person will likely want to leave. So let's move on. In my speech, and now some more responses. First, our primary argument is that our argument of the fact that these people do not perpetuate the harm of this child. First, understand that these people did not choose to be born in this society. They were born there. They did not choose to be born there. They were just by circumstance living there in the first place. That already is one mark for why these people are not directly responsible for the suffering of this child. Go ahead.
If people living in Omelas who have been good all their life and they are pure, why would they suddenly normalize suffering? What is the mechanical?
This makes I understand your POI. This makes no sense because this society has already existed for a long time, and so it's already been normalized. That because of the fact that the society existed, there's likely going to be the prevailing narrative that these people are that their way of life is the way it is because it has to be. Now, so more arguments as to why these people do not perpetuate the suffering. Let's give you an analogy of a genocide. Let's say you're living in a country in which your government is committing a genocide against another people, and you are a part of that military. In this scenario, you are perpetuating the suffering that is being caused upon the people you are committing genocide upon. Because if you leave, if you choose to no longer be complicit in this genocide, if you walk away from the military, you are now one less person who is oppressing the people who are committing genocide. But the difference here is that if you do walk away, there is no difference to the suffering of this child. Hence, proving that you are not actively causing harm to this child. Because if you were causing active harm to this child, the suffering of this child would reduce in your absence. But that is not what is occurring. The suffering of this child does not reduce in your absence. Next, responding to the premise responding to the idea that these peoples will live better lives elsewhere. First off, number one is that there is no guarantee that you will find society out there. Number two is that there is no place better than Omelas. This is a society of pure happiness, pure sorrowlessness, and a pure emotional connection with your peers. And another one of their arguments states that there will be no value in joy because of the very fact that their way of life will stagnate. Panel, this does not make any sense because of the simple fact that because it mentions the motion that there is no sorrow, and that is only true because of the fact that there must be some kind of supernatural force that makes it so that these people never feel sorrow, that the happiness of this people never diminish for as long as they live in the city. And so that makes these people apart from normal human beings, because normal human beings, in absence of hardship, in absence of struggle, will eventually become bored of that way of life. However, that is not what we see here, because the motion explicitly states that these people never feel sorrow, that these people never feel that these people are always happy, hence completely completely nullifying their argument that their way of life will become boring and will somehow stagnate. And as for closing remarks, let's extend a little bit more while I still have time on the kinds of lives that these people likely live. These people have friends and families that they have grown very, very accustomed to. They've made extremely fruitful relationships with. What exists on the outside? All that exists on the outside are apostates whom they can never build the same level of connection with as they do in the city. And so with that said, what we in the opposition say is that it's better to live in this city, even with these oppression of this singular individual, because of the simple fact that this child's suffering will not change with your absence. I am proud to oppose.
Why this person is different from the normal people in our world? Because you have to understand, in our world, the people actually face the sadness, the people actually face what is trauma, and these people actually want to stay away from these things. And in that particular sector, these people actually choose to be in a normal situation or choose to be happy. But this person is different. This person has never faced any kind of trauma. This person has never faced any kind of sadness. So this person would choose to always be in the happy bubble. This particular characterization is entirely false, because this person never had the urge to actually be in this happy bubble for a longer time, for the lifelong time. So you have to understand this person's characterization is different from the normal person's characterization of life. Secondly, even if he is not doing the crime himself, it is still important for him, because you have to understand, whenever we actually think about that some people actually took the bribe, but we are using that money for our own benefits, but we actually still think about our moral compass, because this particular bribe money actually doesn't came from a good purpose that I shouldn't be using. That particular thing actually shows you that people actually concerned about the things that they are not directly connected, but still they are connected indirectly with the particular crime. That is also important for that particular person who will be living that particular city at that particular moment. So we believe even if you are not doing that particular thing directly, that is important for that particular person. Secondly, why that particular person will want to feel sad? You have to understand, even if in our normal life, sometimes we want to cry, sometimes we want to actually feel the pain, sometimes we want to be in the bubble of pain, because that's also a feeling that actually helps us to improve. For this person, this particular thing is even extreme, because this person has always been in the happy bubble, and this person has never felt any kind of sadness in his entire life. And this time, when he is facing this person has this in an extreme level, and this person wants to be in this feeling, because this feeling is giving him something different he had ever felt before. That particular thing actually important to actually, he wants to feel that particular feeling, and he will give importance to that particular sadness, and particular he wants to be that, yeah, that trauma will be disturbing him for this particular situation. Let's move on to why he will make that particular decision. When he will think about these ideas, and he will also think about, it's helping my society, and still it's not good for that particular person. Then there will be a question arisen that, yeah, is it utility will be better or that particular thing will be better? That person will always think, yes, I have always felt family, friends, and things around my life. But this particular child has never felt this. He has always been in a society where the society has been helpful towards him, and he will grow with that particular empathy level, and he will think that particular empathy for that particular child, that this child should have that empathy as well, and they have always emphasized that particular thing in that particular society. And that particular person will actually understand that this trauma level they have, even if altogether they haven't even never faced that particular situation, that trauma is different for that person, and he will understand, even if we all are happy, that still this is different, because he has always been in the happy bubble. That happiness bubble is not something extremely important for him to think about, because he can't think about the other life and other traumas and that particular moment. That's why he will think about it in very important situation. Even if he is happy with his own people, he has a successful life in that particular situation, you have to understand, this person, even if he has completely human emotions, even if he is in a happy bubble, he doesn't have any kind of trauma, this person as a human wants to explore something new every time he wants to be in this particular situation. That means this person will always want that particular thing, that, yeah, even if he has a family, he has a bond with that particular thing, these bonds, the happiness he will will actually prefer will be the walking away happiness, walking away satisfaction, because that satisfaction is in a greater level for him, because he has never felt it. He wants to be that happiness, being a hero in that particular society. So that is important. He wants to feel that satisfaction is even greater, because the satisfaction with family and other people is normalized in his society. He can't actually make it and feel it in a greater way he is feeling right now. So that in that particular moment, he will actually feel that particular things. Why the empathy levels will actually work for that particular person as well. He has always grown in a society where the empathy has been characterized as the greater thing, because you have to be helpful. You have to be helpful to create a utopia. So that means this person has another type of empathy level, because he knows that he has to serve the society, he has to be helpful, he can't do any kind of crime. That means even if someone who is the person, he doesn't have any more tensions to think about in that particular society. The only tension he has to think about in that particular society is about that child. That means the other concerns doesn't concern him. The only concern that concerns him is that child, and he will think about that child. That will be his entire empathy level actually lead on. So that's thing. Why he will be considered him indirectly criminal, because he will believe that because of this sacrifice, I am living the better life. His bloods are in my hands. That particular feeling will be important. And the last thing, even if he knows that that might not make the difference, but that is important for me because I have made everything I could do from my side. That particular satisfaction is important for him in that particular situation. The very last thing is afterlife. This person will be very enthusiastic about the afterlife, because he doesn't know that there can be sadness, there can be criminal, there can be dystopia. But this person will be very enthusiastic about that life, because he wants to feel something new, and this person will always want to be in that new thing, because as he has the human emotions, he doesn't want to feel bored as other lives he is continuously leading in that particular moment. So that person will make that decision for surely. The principle of that satisfaction in this level, by making this decision, we believe that person will walk away from the city. Thank you, everyone.
First of all, you understand, when you are just taking a choice, always you have the chance to do the value judgment. We believe that when it's a utility versus the morality debate, always you have a chance to do the value judgment of this thing at the very first place. But secondly, you have to understand, when you are taking a choice, while taking a choice, always people act like very selfish. We believe that this kind of selfish nature of people is something that is gonna work out in this debate. Just think about the perspective of that particular child who is just absorbing the suffering. Just think like the green miler. The green miler is happy to absorb all the sorrows of the other people. He's happy to do with that. We believe that maybe the concern of this child can also be like this, that I am built for this, my destiny is like this. And also we believe that he can also support this kind of fate of his, that just because of me, this particular whole society is living with this kind of empathy, sympathy, and very peaceful life. We believe that this is a justification of the child by himself. Maybe there is no negative perception that this child doesn't like this kind of things, or the child is requesting them to live this kind of society. We believe that this can be the proof that how the other world or the outside world can be look like. What Suhala has said, that you never know, living in this kind of particular society, how this kind of false thing, how this kind of negative stereotypes look like. But we believe that maybe this can be the proof that how the outer world actually look like, where the suffering, where the wars, where the selfishness existed, and how can be the impact of this kind of things. When you see the misery of this kind of child, maybe this child is kept in that kind of place because you never leave this place. At least you can just assume how can the outer world exactly looks like. We believe that this is the main derivative rebuttal of the case of closing government. Like, you will explore everything, you will have the incentive to go over everything, you will have the incentive to go over sorrows, or you will have the impression to go with the negative stereotypes. But we believe that this is the first thing, that when you see the child, when you see the miserable condition, this is the thing that is preventing you to do so. But secondarily, you have to understand in which kind of particular world where your individuality or family metric or the relationship metric works well, and where your satisfaction is utmost. We believe that the first thing, when you have the just justification of morality, first thing, there's no subjectivity of morality. When you are going to choose a morality, it can never always be right. Actually, we believe when you are just preaching a notion that I am living it, they have said that I am living a choice, right? So when you are living a choice, you are just living that society, you are living your family, you are living your closest ones. We believe that when you are doing it, your just moral dilemma is creating a manipulative choice to the other people to live the society. Maybe the justification for those people were to remain in the society, but when your morality is harming their decision, we believe that it's also a manipulative morality which is creating the clash and which is never cleared from the government house. But secondly, you have to understand, when you have the chance to do the value judgment in which world your relationship matrix and individuality, your rationality works well. You have to understand, in the world you are normalizing many things. They are saying that we are boycotting many things from the moral perspective, but you have to understand there is no particular result of that, right? And when you are boycotting something, you have to ensure that is there any close extent of that, or is there any clear impact of that. We believe that when you are doing that, maybe there are other people who are supporting to live in that particular area, right? And even if you just clear out that whole Omelas, there's no surety about that suffering of the child will end. We believe that this is also a choice that doesn't have any kind of bulletproof evidence that living this kind of city will end all of the suffering and will end everything that you are wanting from this kind of moral dilemma. But secondarily, we believe that in your world, you are doing worse. You are going with many kind of things. You know there are many kind of race discrimination. There are many kind of particular exploitation over many kind of employees. These things are happening, but you are just letting those things going to be good because you are already choosing these things because you always prefer your happiness, your utility. We believe that this is the thing in your world that you always want your betterment, not preferring only the individual happiness of that kind of particular child. You also think about yourself. This is the thing in which world you are happy. We believe that the second thing in this particular debate, the realization is very much important. We believe that what the negative things have done, this is the proof how the child is going through a very suffering condition. We believe that in the particular context, you have to understand in which world the utilitarianism is working very well. We believe that the happiness and the well-being is very much important of the majority. You have to understand in the world where you are exploring that there has many kind of negative stereotypes. Maybe yes, you don't know how those things look like, but you have a comparative analysis. Maybe you are living in a utopian world. Maybe going to another country or any other place maybe have more problematic scenarios rather than in your Omelas. We believe that in the other world there will be crimes, there will be disorders, there will be diseases that doesn't remain in your city. We believe that the prosperity and happiness and also the maximized happiness is very much preferable in your world. We believe that as a citizen of Omelas, you will always prefer this kind of majority happiness matrix and the majority prosperity. But secondly, we believe that the social context is also important. As a citizen of Omelas, you have already agreed to the terms of the society. When you are just breaching this kind of social contract, we believe that you are already hypocrite from the perspective of the society, because already as a citizen of Omelas, you have given the word that you will never leave Omelas, and you have also agreed that this child exists in here, and you have also agreed to go with it and go with the other people and to build a very happy family, and already the society is going through a very well-being notion. But we believe that when you are doing it, it's already breaching the social contract of the society, and you're already leaving the whole society in a particular condition. Secondarily, we believe that when you are doing it, also many kind of negative stereotypes can occur. When you are leaving this kind of people, we believe that a particular decisionlessness or a particular clash can occur. We believe that this kind of decision, that either I will leave it or not, we believe that two sides or polarization will happen. We believe that this kind of polarizations are problem for a society. We believe that there no kind of particular disorder existed in the society, but just creating a discourse or creating a polarization, you are just trying to create a more impulsive decision or a more impulsive impact in a society. We believe that can be the start of the disorder in Omelas. But secondly, you have to understand this kind of consequentialism theory says that when you are doing this kind of thing, this can also spread the misery to the other communities, but also it can destabilize the delicate balance of this kind of particular society. We believe that in that particular world, you can ensure the happiness matrix, you can ensure the satisfaction matrix of yours, but your individualism and family won't just run well in that particular world. But rather we prefer to live in Omelas and not to live. Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Firstly, there has been many false claims made by the closing opposition. Firstly, they say to you that this person, the one, knows that how the outside world is. No, he doesn't. He doesn't know how the outside world operates. Second, he says that when he is within the society, he actually accepts the contracts, the norms in this society. False. He is born in this manipulative society that has created a facade of happiness, and he is obliged to grow in this society. That is their claim, but not ours. And understand that this is not a universal claim either. This is a claim made from their side. Secondly, why this is important to understand the concept of trauma. You see, in a country that is very much covered with the problems of poverty and disasters like Bangladesh, a volunteer back in Rana Plaza disaster committed suicide just because he has seen the horrors of people dying there, the horrors of saving those people, cutting their legs. You see, this is the concept of trauma people bear, and this is why actually other people's sufferings create a psychological dissonance in their mind. And in this house, everyone has ignored this subject, that how this psychological dissonance creates later, how this psychological dissonance actually contribute to our mental depression, our unhappiness. You see, an average human being always feels the pressure of deontological ethics. He feels that he has to act within the deontological ethics, and this pressure actually creates a sense of personal integrity in all of ours. We are not a perfect human being, but we are always know that what is right and what is wrong, and if we do something wrong, there is a sense that, okay, I have done something wrong. This discomfort always stays with us, and you have to recognize this discomfort. And when you were seeing this person suffering, and you were facing this moral dilemmas, this conflicts constantly, then it is inevitable to feel that mental happiness, that pressure you are talking about. So the facade, the happiness facade and the fulfillment facade is completely wrong from their side. And when they tells us that this is a debate of utility, I must say that utility doesn't make it right. Utility doesn't make it right. First of all, you have to recognize that when you see Handmaid's Tale, there was a woman who was captivated because they weren't doing very well in a conventional society. In their eyes, they were not a proper woman. And this is why in that society, in that dystopian society, they were only used as a machine to bear child. And because this was a utility in that society. But if you think from a very simple and linear mindset, this doesn't make it right. Utility doesn't make suffering and misery right. And secondly, you have to acknowledge Francis Ford Coppola's classic Apocalypse Now, where the military personnel was going insane because he has seen the horrors and deaths in the Vietnamese war, and he has seen this bloodshed, the sufferings of normal people, and later he went mad. And this is the type of psychological dissonance, conflict, and moral dilemmas people face. And the result of this moral conflicts and dilemmas is not something that you actually valueless. And they have made a claim that why he won't care. We always care, and this is something I have already stated from my examples. And you see, I have recently seen a post where a train operator was completely traumatized because he has seen that two people has committed suicide before the rails, and he didn't commit the crime, but his witness to that crime, his witness to that event actually made him traumatized for life. And this is the kind of discussion that should have been made in this house, but none of the house really engaged. On the opposition side, the opening opposition made some claims that why the society has normalized it. You see, in our society, bribery is pretty much normalized in a society like Bangladesh. But when you see that your uncle, who actually earns from the bribery money, you don't accept a token of gift from him. You actually feel ashamed to receive a token of gift from him. This is the sense of personal integrity that actually hits you. Then how are you assuming that just because something is normalized in the society will be accepted from a very linear judgment? Number one. Secondly, they have made a claim that outside world is worst. You don't know that outside world is worst. And when this person doesn't feel a fulfillment of life in this world where he has grown up, then why wouldn't he take the chance to step outside? Because this world is also causing him a lot of mental pressure and trauma. And I have proven you from real examples is why this trauma and conflicts will occur in this person's mind. Number one, which is very important in this debate. Secondly, they tells us, the opening opposition tells us the concept of utility. I have also broken this concept that utility doesn't make child suffering justified. Thirdly, when the closing opposition comes and says us that he will actually seeing that here is suffering and in the real world there will be suffering more, this is not the issue, because you see, he has seen that suffering is here, and in this world he can't raise voice, he can't make change. So the risk of going outside will be a concern that he might take. Yeah.
Even though this individual knows that the suffering of this child means that his friends and family don't have to suffer, why do you think this individual is going to prioritize the suffering of the child over the suffering of everyone else?
We have seen over and over in the history that people has left their family, their children, for the cause of moral obligation, for the cause of personal ethics. Use any words, any ethical proposition that has been made in his life, people has always felt drawn to do what is right, to make what is right. We don't say that this is everyone who wants to make the right choice, but the one who is very confident about making the right choice actually feels the pressure of it, actually feels the real pressure and trauma of it. And when he feels that, it is very morally justified in this house. And why we win in this debate actually? Because today we are the only house who actually represents you the very concept of morality from a philosophical stance, from a psychological stance, that why from this individual's perspective it is very much right, and why the opening opposition and closing opposition's arguments doesn't stand in this house. This is why in today's house we win. Thank you.
You have a negative morality is going on for a long time. You have seen how the negative principles are out there. You have seen the people suffers a lot of time. You have seen how the impacts of a negative principle goes on. You have at this what it does to a normal people. We firmly believe with all those good principles and bad principles makes you to do the value judgment, at least which things I am supposed to do as an actor. In this particular world, we firmly believe this whole concept of negative morality is missing. And this is the fact that the moment that you have all the missing negative principles, you don't know that how suddenly seeing a suffering, you don't know how to act, how the suffering is supposed to be. That is to say, if a person is making a choice that yes, I am supposed to get out of the city, probably it's not likely. Probably most likely these people even suffer. These people won't even choose to do that. Because understand the fact that this person has all those memories with their family, all those memories with the communities, all those memories with every single person out there. That means he doesn't know exactly how a negative principle's impacts looks like. He doesn't have a negative impact, negative principle to compare that whether I should take this extreme decision or not. That is the most missing part in either of the houses, and we think that makes us win this debate. And some specific questions. A person who is seeing all the sorrows, who is seeing all this suffering normalized in his particular world, why he is supposed to take a decision, why he is supposed to be the Buddha, why he is most likely to abandon all his family. Understand the fact that you see a beggar is begging in your streets. You see a cleaner is cleaning all their toiletries. We firmly believe you feel empathic. Even if you feel empathetic to them, you are not necessarily adopting that person. You are not necessarily giving every single well to them. You are not necessarily giving every single thing away. In a current world where all the negative impacts are coming up, it is less likely that you are making that rational choice to make all the groundbreaking or life-changing decision of your life. Probably you are doing some measure of thing. We firmly believe this is why the minimal outcome, why the minimal input is not present in this world. We firmly think you are taking a very drastic decision that if I go, all my happiness is out. If I go, probably my family, I'll not face my family after that. Probably I will miss my community. Probably that means it's a drastic decision. That is to say, when you are helping a beggar with some 10 taka and leaving that place is not similar to each other. That is why we think this whole decision is not symmetrical. This whole thing is not symmetrical in this particular world. Now, number two, we firmly believe that even if the whole concept of exploring new things, if I win this debate, I will not probably just jump from the building. That is to say, if we think this world has always seen the good things, probably it's less likely that I will choose that where I will choose something which is not used to me, where something used to be. We firmly believe, even if seeing the sufferings, I will still think that yes, I want to stay in that community, I want to stay in that city, I want to stay in the capital. Well, understand the fact that the mere thing, people are still selfish behind the choices. People are still selfish behind all the things they do. People still brag about each other. People still go show up whatever they have in their particular world. You have seen the clashes of the entire world coming up. Think about a world where the world was never introduced to the things of like the illegal things or like explicit things. People still had the choice that whether they should move on to like that a world where utopia exists, where no illegal things exist in the first sense of humanity. People still chosen the human intent that I choose myself over every single person out there. I choose the outcomes over myself. We firmly believe people still made that choice. People still became selfish to look upon that, because in this world, even if you left out the communities, you left out the families, you are not facing any illness, any sorrows, any single thing. We firmly believe in that utopian world where the humankind even started, we firmly believe when the illegal things never even started, people still choose to make it a hell. People chosen themselves to do it within themselves. That is why we firmly, this is absolutely wrong idea. These people are likely to make that choice because there is no more negative moral harms. Your POI, please.
If you cannot comprehend the sufferings because you have not experienced it, why do you think you can comprehend the sufferings you will face in the desert? Please elaborate.
Understand the fact that these people is a major thing. These people were less likely to choose that I am supposed to activate the morality. We firmly believe when the moment you're putting a burden to that person, that with the principle that you're supposed to remove all the sufferings, we firmly think it won't even change the thing. And even if you do, we firmly believe it also explicitly harms your active choice. This whole thing, understand the fact that in this world, you have already contracted, you have given a social entity, you have consented that yes, I will live in this society where this whole suffering is going on this child. That is to say, you are already justifying and normalizing this whole thing. Even you have the social narrative that says that this whole thing is completely fine. That is to say, when you are putting the pressure, you are supposed to be giving them that line of thought. Probably this is wrong. This is less likely to be happen because this person already had this line of thought, already had this line of well, she consent every single thing, well, all the consents and all the notions of world, that society looks like that. And more importantly, your government gives you all those fundamental stuff you are looking forward to, because this whole social structures never gives you any sorrows. This social structure never gives you any illness. We firmly believe the government itself is trying to make you as happy as possible. We firmly believe it not necessarily the moment that you are consenting to that, we firmly believe it is less likely that you will make that choice to do so. That is why we firmly believe that that morality is very much subjective. You cannot burden a person. You cannot give a person that yes, you are supposed to show that. Even think about the government social structure. The social structure still is giving you the way. The social structure is still showing you that what are sufferings of the child. The social structure is showing you that yes, something is going on. That means all the morality, that means the social structure is showing you that every single way you are supposed to do or not. That means the moment in time you are seeing the suffering, you are less likely that you see the government as or the social structure as a very normal wise thing, and you still justify that my government, my social structure is giving me every single way possible. That is to say, you don't feel the way out, you don't feel the urge to get out from that part of time. You still believe all the stuff that are out there are completely fine for me. All the stuff out there is completely good for me. It's rational for me not to live. Rather, even if that does, it doesn't bring us explicit change to society, which is very important for this debate. Thank you.